These two didn't. They felt that Hanover was just about the best they could dish up. And let's hope they can produce something like it today. Of course, the reason Becker's not seeded is that he's had such an abbreviated year. His rankings dropped, and they go strictly according to rankings. If they had to go according to past form, indoor form, even on his short showing this year, he would still be seeded and they wouldn't be meeting. But it's a bonus for us.
Certainly is. It's their first ever meeting before a semi-final of a normal draw tournament. I mean, obviously they've met as they did last year in the round-robin stages of the World Championship and then in the latter stages, but in an ordinary draw tournament like this one, it is the first time they've ever met before the semi-finals. Remember, these are guys who've played 18 matches against each other. Sampras has won 11, Becker has won 7. It's their second meeting of this year. The other one, of course, the quarterfinals at Wimbledon. Sampras winning 6-1, 6-7, 6-1 and 6-4 in what was an emotional occasion again, with Becker announcing afterwards that that was his last ever appearance at the Paris indoors, which he has won 3 times as he's won Wimbledon. Indoors, Becker has the edge, 7 wins to 5. They've played each other here once, and Sampras won that. It was in the 1995 final. And Sampras won 7-6, 6-4, 6-4. So that was an interesting point that Michael Stieck made in our introduction there. He said, well, Sampras maybe doesn't have that much to play for. He's already safely into Hanover. And perhaps for Becker, it's a last chance to show that he's still up there with the very best.
Yes, I think that's very telling. And I think Becker, as Stieck said, Becker played pretty well against Mark Woodford. There are those who think that because it's a little slower here, that it suits Sampras, who's undoubtedly quicker about the court than Becker is. Becker's a little heavier, has definitely lost a little bit of his speed. But I somehow think that it favours Becker just that much more, because it gives him a bit more time for his shots. I think were it faster, I think his lack of speed would be shown up that much more. And consequently, I think it becomes a much more of an even match. And given the fact that Becker's had a match out here, remember this is Sampras, and Mike De Palma would be well aware of that fact. Sampras has not played a match. He's had a bye into this position. So he's under a definite disadvantage, and Becker, therefore, perhaps much more of a 50-50 man than otherwise would be the case.
Mike De Palma, of course, the coach of Boris Becker. We look at Pete Sampras's statistics. And just picking up on the point you made there, which I think was a very telling one, I thought that the slower surface here would probably be to the disadvantage of Greg Ruzetsky. But watching his match against Jan Simrink, and for those of you who are just joining us, and delighted to say Greg won that match 6-4, 6-3, he had more time to play his ground strokes, and he won very, very comfortably, broke the Simrink serve in the very opening game of the match, and I think dropped 4 points on serve in that opening set, and broke Simrink twice in the second set, and again never faced a break point. And he just seemed to have that little bit more time, and Greg, on his ground strokes, he's got fairly long swings apart from the chip backhand return, but the passing shots, it seemed that because he had more time, he was more effective.
Yes, that's exactly right. If your technique is perfect, it doesn't really matter what the surface is, and you can then handle a faster surface quite well. But if your technique is just a little wanting at times, and there's no doubt that Ruzetsky's a little bit like Rafters is, then the bit more time they have, the better. Becker, of course, has actually got a pretty good technique and can handle fast courts, but my point really is that he's slowed down, and consequently just a bit more time so that he can get his big frame and his feet into position, and he's going to be a little better off.
Lars Graf from Sweden in the chair. The winner of this match will play Peter Korda, the winner in Stuttgart last week. The last 16 draw is shaping up like this now. It's the winner of this to play Korda. Alex Korecha will play Thomas Muster. Greg Ruzetsky will play Bodan Olirak. And Nicholas Escudé will play Yevgeny Kavelnikov. That's the top half of the draw. Todd Woodbridge, who today put out Carlos Moya, the 6th seed. He will play Jonas Bjorkman. Richard Krajcek will take on Patrick Rafter, the winner of that fabulous match. Sergi Bruguera will play Guillaume Raux, who put out Marcelo Rios. And Thomas Enquist will play Magnus Gustafsson, who put out Michael Chang. That's the lineup for the last 16. And the news on Ruzetsky, we've all been getting our slide rules out. We think he's literally now on the brink of qualifying, and I think if he can beat Ulirak tomorrow, they never played each other, by the way. Most people think that he will topple over the brink and be in Hanover, so there's an awful lot for Rosetsky to play for tomorrow. And whilst we're on the subject of Hanover, again, for those of you who joined us this evening as we look at Paul Annacone, coach of Pete Sampras, well, the great news we've been able to announce today is that joining Frew and myself and Simon Reed, who will be doing the highlight show every day, John McEnroe will be part of our commentary team at the ATP Tour World Championships in Hanover the week after next. We're looking forward very, very much to having one of the all-time greats in the booth with us. We'll have two former world #1 doubles players. And Mac, of course, also #1 in singles. And I must say, I'm looking forward to working with Frew and John. I think we have, with those two, the two best tennis analysts in the world, bar none. So we're all getting very excited, and we're very excited at the prospect of bringing you this match exclusively live. Sampras against Becker, and it's a pretty full Palais Omnisport, who of course are disappointed that Cedric Pierline, having lost that thriller from match points up. We've got a whole host of players who've got through the tournament from match point down. Seamerink indeed in the first round against Todd Martin. David Prenisil, he won from match points down, and now Patrick Rafter. Through the totally unfair question, who's going to win?
I think Becker might just take it. The one worry I have about Becker is the nerves I saw occasionally on his forehand against Mark Woodford. But I think if he can overcome that, I think the fact that he's played a match, that he's got still a lot to prove here, may make just that little bit of a difference. Becker won the spin of the coin and has put Sampras in to serve.
Between them, they've won 99 career titles, 50 to Sampras, 49 to Becker. This really is the clash of the Titans. Well, if the rest of the match is as good as the first point, this is going to go down as the classic of all time.
Sampras' very first serve of the match was a fault, but it was 200 kilometers an hour. There was a huge murmur from the crowd. Who'd seen nothing quite like that from either Rafter or Pierline. Sampras' first serve into court, an ace and 198 kilometers an hour, and that's wide, and it's commonly recognized that it's the ones down the center that get the fastest speed on the radar gun. Yeah, most peculiar there, because the line judge put his arm out to signal out and forgot to call. Yeah, and one can understand why Becker's a little upset. He's just got to tell himself that he knows it was out, but with no call, even though the linesman put out his arm, Becker feels it's been an overrule. She cannot obviously get over Pierlian's loss.
Let's go.
There's an example of what Prue was saying. He's just that half a pace slower than at his prime. Becker, at his prime, he probably would have got to that one without having been totally on the stretch.
And Sampras, of course, trying to use the forehand as much as he possibly can. So much more pace on that shot.
Sampras holds his opening service game despite only getting one first serve in the 8 points. So Becker's gamble of putting Sampras into serve first almost paid off.
Yes, came very close. Sampras likes to stamp his authority on the match with a lot of big power to begin with. And Becker was there really to repulse it. But Sampras showing good form and pretty good pace on the backhand as well. Becker's backhands looked good, looked very flat, and of course he can engender a tremendous amount of power there, but it's just this movement of Becker's that's lacking a little bit of agility. You would always expect it of the big man, but there have been times in his career when he's looked pretty agile about the back of the court. Not now, though.
Morris will be 30 on the 22nd of next month. CNN called him a 30-year-old this morning. I almost rang up and complained and threatened to sue on Becker's behalf for being libelled.
Yes, he shares a birthday with Gardner Malloy, one of the great Americans of yesteryear.
Pete, 26 now. He was 26 on the 12th of August. Love one, Becker serving.
It's interesting, Becker stating that and acknowledging Sampras as the greatest of all time, just how he counters that in his mind. you've obviously got to try and dismiss it. Otherwise, you're always up a gum tree.
First double fault of the match.
Well, interesting that Sampras was flicking from the forehand side prior to the serve, as if this is what he was anticipating.
One game all. Sampras, 6 titles to his name this year: the Australian Open, San Jose, Philadelphia, Wimbledon, Cincinnati, and the Grand Slam Cup, where Becker was the champion last year. Indeed, that's the last title Becker has won. Becker yet to reach a final in 1997. He's got one more chance. He's playing Stockholm next week. And his best result this year, reaching the semi-finals in Halle. Mind you, he's only played 27 matches. Sampras 56 matches this year.
So while Sampras questions this, the 6 titles that Sampras has won now puts him at 50, which is one more than Becker's won.
Well, unfortunately, Lars Graf has been very clever and turned his microphone off, and I have not the faintest clue what's all this about. Anyway, it's 1-1, 15 in love. Well, he thought about his slam dunk and thought it was going long.
Just comes a little late.
It does surprise me, Fru, that a tournament of this status doesn't have Cyclops here.
Yes, it is weird.
A line monitoring device which just takes a lot of the heat out of the service calls. Plenty of heat in that forehand from Sampras.
Becker's really got to do a lot more concentrating on the Sampras backhand. I know it's improved since I originally believed it was a comparatively weak shot. But the forehand, well, I mean, nothing flows quite like it.
And a second ace from Sampras. At 195 Ks takes the world number 1 into a 2-1 lead. Becker serving 1-2.
Becker's maintaining this serve to the forehand.
And I love the way sort of Sampras played the shot and was walking. He knew he'd hit a winner. It's 4 all the way.
Well, the serve to the backhand reaped its reward, but just great anticipation by Sampras and skill. Anticipation of this forehand volley.
Let's finish.
Oh my word. How did you see that one, Frew?
Too close to call.
Well, it's very seldom that Frew doesn't express an opinion. I have to say I thought that was good. And Sampras has 2 break points.
They're certainly up for it, these two. They're daggers out there. I tell you, the killer in them is very much to the fore, and that's good.
Becker's first ace to save the second break point.
Where he's been a little overshadowed by Sampras of late. Ability to save break points. Of course, he used to be the very best, Becker. One goes back how he used to save them with second serves very often.
Whoa.
Another full-blooded forehand brings another break point.
Yes, it's obviously designed this to go to the forehand, but I've got to feel it's a mistake. Sampras is now expecting it. Becker's forehand landing plumb on the line, not giving Sampras much scope, and probably the fact that he lifted the forehand shows just a little hesitation on Sampras' part, hoping that it might go out, the forehand.
Becker holds that one down at 201 kilometers an hour. Becker passes the first test. And my mind goes back a week, and Sampras losing to Richard Krajicek, another Wimbledon champion, of course. And early on in the first set, Sampras had 3 break points. Didn't take them, never had another. And he said afterwards, well, if I'd taken my chances early, it might have been a different match. One thing Sampras has got to do is serve better. 29% of first serves in. That's awful.
Ball kept catching the ball. This, that sort of serve, that sort of pace, you've got to watch it very, very carefully into your 2 hands. Easiest way to break a finger.
This one ball girl caught a full-blooded Brzezinski ace in the full, and she'd have got the fielder's prize. Kelly Jones, one of the doubles players watching. I think there are an awful lot of players out here tonight. Everyone wants to watch this one. Oh, my word. When they blow with Sampras, they go in a major way, the strings.
Well, he has them so tightly strung, of course, and very, very thin gut. And you can see he's not only got his Wilson sponsorship, but also a gut sponsorship, so it doesn't cost him a bean.
Sampras's first double. Well, Sampras, I think, was debating whether the return was going to go in or out. It certainly would have been close.
And it's the missed forehand here, and this was the one reservation I had about Becker. This was definitely a chance, a shot he ought to have made.
And you don't get too many chances against the Sampras serve. 3-2 Sampras leads in the opening. Maurice Becker 2-3 down. One of the portraits, a lot of the portraits of the top stars were done last year. 2-3. Remember, you were writing to me and saying any chance of getting hold of them, and I suggested she got in touch with the French Federation, and they said send her a set. Becker's second double fault.
Yes, and I just wonder whether Becker serving more to the forehand hasn't got something to do with the fact that when he tends to go to the backhand these days, he overhits a lot of them, whereas by going to the forehand, he's cutting across the ball and therefore has more control.
Nope, just cut across that one a bit too much.
But it's the serve away to the backhand that has always been, I think, the Becker trademark as far as his serving is concerned, because it's almost the reverse spin, and it ends up being very, very heavy onto the racket, almost uncontrollable. move to that one, Sampras. Although it was a good shot, you can see the disgust he feels. He got over there so rapidly, he felt he was onto a good thing.
Stroke play from both of them. A little flick backhand. It's a trademark shot from Sampras with his back to his opponent.
Yes, I think for me that perhaps the best point, other than the opening couple of points. So much variety here. Becker's, I thought, was superb until Sampras replied, and then Becker, wrong footing him, played exactly the right shot.
And a second ace from Becker, and they're level.
Sampras this year has dropped down the ace league. He's sixth at averaging 10.5 aces per match. But his charity will have made $52,900 because he's giving this year $100 for every ace he served, and he's served 529.
Nope. Now living in Tampa, Florida. Becker also at the home in Florida, but in Miami. Again. Rich variety indeed.
Oh, two heavyweights really suddenly playing like flyweights.
Oh, that's one of the hook ones, and Barbara Becker, who we saw briefly, would have approved of that.
Magnificent clawed shot. Always reminds me of a lobster's claw, Becker's big forehand. Nice to see it operating.
Another look at Mike De Palma, Becker's coach.
It's the second time he's really laid into the return and got it back deep immediately to Sampras's backhand, and Sampras has failed.
Seemed to hesitate there, Sampras, and let the ball drop. If he'd come storming in, he would have had a shoulder-high volley. Instead, Sampras facing break point.
Well, Becker had made up his mind that Sampras was going to go cross-court. And not the most confident of volleys by Sampras, but certainly the right direction. Becker's trademark flat backhand down the line, just letting him down there. Flatness became a curve. A little lucky.
Both men have had chances to break now then, but neither has. And it's Pete Sampras who leads by 4 games to 3. We're in the opening set.
What's up? Yeah.
More than 1,400 sport shops in Europe. Sport 2000.
Freshenet. The magic of passion.
Paris Open with Eutelsat Satellite TV.
Just watching a replay from the previous game as we welcome you back to Eurosports Live and exclusive coverage of the Open de Paris. What a second round match. Sampras against Becker. The early statistics, not a lot to choose between them. 3-4, new balls. Becker's third double fault.
Well, it was there for Sampras to hammer. But of course he goes for so much on that shot that sometimes the smoothness becomes a little ragged.
Maurice Becker now, of course, the German number 2 behind young Nicholas Kiefer. Becker at 38 in the rankings, Kiefer at 32. It's Becker's lowest ranking since May of 1985. Mind you, if he won this match with 50 bonus points at stake for beating the world's number 1, he might put his young protege in his place. Becker heading up the Mercedes team, of which Kiefer is the young star.
Was there ever a time he was behind Stick in the rankings? I imagine there must have been.
Yes, because Stick got up to number 2 in the world, didn't he? Yeah. And that was certainly not at a time when Becker was number 1.
No.
It's one of the surprising things about Becker's career. Very few weeks at number 1. But he did make it in January of 1991. Now then, Becker's had a break point, but that was a fleeting one. Love 30, he'll be sensing a chance of 2 or 3.
Yes, and the unforced error, the Sampras forehand, the preceding point, can't afford to do it because sooner or later Becker's going to come up with the goods.
Well, a most unusual sort of jab backhand there from Sampras. He played it so well.
Yes, lovely balance, surprisingly amount of speed behind it as a result.
Well, not often you see Sampras play the drive volley.
And just no hesitation in it.
Sampras gets him out of trouble. Love 30 down, but he holds serve 230. And we remain on serve in the opening set. Sampras leads 5 games to 4. Again, don't worry, you're not missing any of the action. That was a replay. Loads of wolf whistles during the change of ends because Becker's changed his shirt. We were saying yesterday with his red breast, he looked a little bit like Cock Robin. Perhaps he's been doing some sunbathing recently somewhere. Look back to Miami for a spot of sun, perhaps to support the Marlins in the World Series. Congratulations to them. It's 4-5 in the opening set. Both men have now served 4 aces. Tremendous serving game from Becker. A love game. The first of the match.
Yeah, and that's the serve, really, I think, that has propped Becker up for so long. That big one out to the backhand. A flat ball, I think Becker is indicating.
And isn't that nice? Shows it to Sampras. Do you agree? Well, what we're going to do, it's replaying the point. Yeah, quite. Perhaps Becker thought he was 15 love down. We're going to start the game again.
Not surprised they flatten the balls. It's the ATP pen ball they're using this week. They'll be using it next and in Hanover. Right on the line. And again. Anything you can do, I can do somewhat better. Much the same. Yep.
Aces 5, 6 and 7 are unleashed from the cannon called Sampras. And he leads 6-5. I confess, Drew, that I haven't worked out how many tie breaks these two have played against each other.
Well, what have you been doing? Eating your way through the spell you had off?
Absolutely. It wasn't lobster, sadly, although that would have been very nice, but it was some very nice salmon and rice.
Becker's forearmed here. Should the tiebreaker be reached, at least he's forearmed here, although he thought those serves were out. They were all good. Because of that serve out to the backhand, now I think that can be used very profitably against Sampras. Although it's a much improved shot, it sets up a lot more easy shots for Becker. A lot more easy volleys, a lot more easy second shots should he play them off the ground as well.
That was that lovely incident with the burst ball. Just look at how Sampras leaps forward. He's quite some way inside the court when he's actually hitting the ball. That's fine as long as you're not touching the ground. I suppose your junior career was underway under the old football rules when you had to keep in touch with the ground?
Yeah. Down to earth.
5-6.
That's good punishing play by Becker. It's much of what my advice would be, just to hammer away there until it falls really short. Sampras sometimes gets into a routine of looping the ball on the backhand side. Have to assume these days that Becker's only wins in the high 70% of his service games. He used to win in the high 80s. Well, it's pretty rough justice, but Becker's missing too many first serves. He hasn't got one in this game.
That's a couple of times he's been very late on that backhand, trying to go down the line. Yes, well, Sampras' serving percentage has gone right up to 62% of first serves in. Becker's has dropped away to 47. So that'll do the trick. 6-8 takes us into the tie-break.
Well, Sampras leads in their tiebreakers by 10-6. 16 of 54 sets they've played have been tiebreakers. Sampras this year, though, 13 won, 13 lost.
That's an extraordinary statistic for the world number one, isn't it?
Yeah. And Becker this year, 7 won, 6 lost.
Well, Tim Henman, who was watching Greg Rosetsky's match today, always reckons that if you win the first point against the serve in a tiebreak, you're going to go on to win it.
Well, Sampras anticipated well, stood his ground. Becker thought he could wrong foot hit behind him, but really trying a lob here, whereas he should really have been trying the drive.
The mini break returned with that fourth double fault. Sampras' aces count is up to 8.
Seems to own that center line. Every serve of his down the middle, plumb on the line.
Oh dear. 4 successive points for Sampras have turned this tiebreak on its head. And they change ends with Sampras leading 4-2.
Yes, a shocking double really to begin with from Becker. You just can't afford to do it. When you're playing, as he acknowledges, one of the great players of all time, and you've got him down, you've really got to keep him down. You don't want to shoot yourself in the foot. And then an awful volley.
Sampras thinks it was long.
Yeah. Sort of felt it, but not easy for us to see. It's on the opposite end to where we are. Ball kit not quite back in position. Ooh.
Yes.
Well, I think he's lucky to get away with that, Sampras.
Very lucky. And very un-Sampras-like. He has a temper, we all know that, we all do. Doesn't often display it on court. The mini break is cancelled out, and we're back on serve in the tie-break.
Well, really good moving by Becker there. It was now or never, really. kept himself alive with really good side-to-side movement.
4-5. But too often he's gone to the forehand, and too often it's come back past him. 2 set points, Sampras. The first point of the set was a thriller, and the last point of the set was pretty good too. Sampras wins the tie-break, 7 points to 4, and now Becker has got a mountain to climb.
Well, I think in many ways we needed a different result here to have a really outstanding match. Of course, Becker could disprove me. He's got such character, the man. It might just be the little bit of inspiration that he really needs, but you've got to feel that the double fault and just too many serves out to the forehand, even in the tiebreaker, 2 serves to the forehand cost him it. One was followed by a missed forehand volley, but again it was a serve to the forehand that led to the forehand volley, and then the other which Sampras just whipped by him. The Sampras backhand is good, but it's still the weaker wing, and it's the shot that generally, with Becker serving outstandingly well, will set up a lot of easy shots for Becker, but the forehand won't. But a huge expletive from Sampras during that tiebreak, and I think he was jolly lucky to get away with it.
You can always imagine that Lars Graf was so shocked to hear it that he thought, hang on, this can't be right, and by that time he'd missed the moment. So I can't remember Sampras swearing like that on court before. Second set then, let's hope it's as good as the first. Becker serving. Do I detect a tone of desperation in the fans?
You have a good ear, sir.
Fifth double.
Pretty voluminous place, this.
It's 14,500 is the capacity when they're playing tennis inside the Palais Omnisport. We're on the banks of the Seine, on the east side of Paris. So we're in the opposite direction from Notre Dame to the Eiffel Tower. My, Sampras didn't half middle that return.
Yeah, that's as good a backhand as you'll see from him, and rather ominous. Becker did well to come that close.
And that's a clever wrong-footing volley from Becker on the stretch. Becker with the benefit of serving first in the second set has his nose in front. 1-love. The statistics so far: Sampras with the edge on the first serves, the edge on the winners. And again, a very unusual but very effective half volley.
Yes, he almost stood upright on it. And the smashing in the last couple of weeks looks to be a little harder. There was a time when Sampras seemed to not hit the cover off the ball on the smash as he does on the serve, almost as if he had a little bit of tendinitis, a little bit of shoulder problem. Becker beginning to rant and rave just a little bit here, not winning the points he feels he has the opportunity to do.
It's rather like the aging lion is realizing that these youngsters are actually going to expel him from the head of the tribe.
Tremendous spring, as we see when he gets up to do his slam dunk.
And Sampras beginning to hold serve ominously easily for Becker. So 2 love service games in a row. They were, of course, divided by a tiebreak.
Yes, in the first set, Sampras lost 12 points in his serve in the set prior to the tiebreaker, and Becker 11. There wasn't much in it. Becker still with his old faithful rackets, hasn't changed them for years. But like Sampras with a gut contract, which the 2 parallel lines at the bottom of the racket suggest on the strings.
That's the first ace from either man of the second set. Both have now served 8 in total. Becker answers Sampras' his love service game with one of his own. Boris leads by 2-1 in the second set. Sampras by 1 set to love. Sampras against Becker doesn't come any better than this. Delighted to be bringing it to you live on Eurosport. Sampras serving 1-2 second set with new balls, having won the first set on the tiebreak.
That stat showing that Sampras had won 81% of his first serves. He's lying 4th this year in percentage of first serves won at 82 generally. Krajcek heads the list. But it's Rosetsky who's heading the list of service games won, winning 91% of his service games. Is the British number one.
So if you're just tuning in, had a good win today over Jan Simring, 6-4, 6-3, 100% of service games won by Rosetsky. I think it was only 8 or 9 points he conceded on serve in the entire match, and 4 of those were doubles. Sampras is 9th ace at 193 Ks, brings him level 2-all. No breaks to serve in this match, but both men have had break points.
You see Becker playing like this, I just feel so sorry that this time next year he could be alongside us in the commentary box or something.
Well, there's nothing Lasgraf can do if the machine bleeps in his ear, and he has to call a let.
One thinks of Michael Stick, who got to the semi-finals at Wimbledon, sitting just near us in the German Eurosport commentary box. And that seems a bit of a waste too. Nice for the viewers and listeners, but the flick of Sampras as he played that shot.
Well, we saw signs of a great backhand return a couple of games ago from Sampras, that the backhand was coming on song, and this is a beauty.
Started with this, making Becker play it off the ground and giving him plenty of time for the right foot right across.
Fourth deuce game of the match, the first of this set.
A little bit, of course, more match sharp and match fit Sampras. It might just begin to weigh at a time like this.
Very fine serve from Becker, because he knew that Sampras would be edging across towards the centre, hoping to bring the big forehand into play. Becker's not going to bow out of the big stage without a real fight. He's ahead 3-2 on serve in the second set. Becker at full stretch, but keeping Sampras at bay in that last service game. Remember that the winner of this will play Peter Korda tomorrow. Also, Karecha against Muster, Ruzetsky, Ulirak, Escude, Kavelnikov, and Woodbridge against Bjorkman, Krajcek, Rafter, Bergera, Rux, Enquist, Gustafsson. All the third-round matches, the round of the last 16 coming up tomorrow. Suddenly Becker finding some returns, telling returns. Sampras has decided that's quite enough of that racket.
Yes, he didn't break a string, but I think he felt it was going enough. Just didn't want to risk it at love 30. That ended up playing that too close to his body, Becker. He gets that close, you can't force it, but of course he'd made up his mind to force before realizing it was close.
Oh, it's tremendous, and it's 2 break points, Becker.
How about this for a shot? Getting Sampras on the back foot, but still it seemed deep enough, and he had to bring off a miracle shot, which he did.
Justin Beams, the president of the French Federation. Oh, and a double fault from Sampras. Only his second of the match. And Becker has the first break of the match.
And an arsenal of shots, really. 2 tremendous backhands, followed by a forehand.
Well, the old Lion has found a second wind. Becker follows up the break of serve with a love service game. His second of this set. And Becker leads by 5 games to 2.
Well, they've all come in here, of course. It's been a match that everybody's been looking forward to so expectantly, even though The thought is that Becker's a bit of a spent force, but hardly showing it now, the way he's rebounded. Just a couple of famous backhand jabs. And of course what we're seeing here are two of the greatest of all-time indoor players. Becker's won 81% of his matches indoors over the year, and Sampras second to him, winning 77%. And this is just their environment. 30 of Becker's titles have come indoors. Nothing to disturb the flow of his play, of course. Speed, an asset indoors, almost a must, unless you've got the guile of a Segura of old or a Centauro of today.
Sampras at 2-5. Serving to stay in this second set. I'm sorry if you're tuning in for the football, but do stay with us. It'll be terrific coverage of that vital qualifier coming up. We've watched two of the greats of the game at work. Just wide. We've had a pair of back-to-back love service games in this set. And what Becker would give for a love service game here, because at 5-3 he's serving to make it one set all.
Yes, it's almost as if they tell themselves to come out with a love game, because it's the third time it's happened. Once the one does it, the other does it.
Becker is the first into double figures in aces. And so often those slightly mishit returns are the most awkward to deal with.
Interesting to see if he continues with his serving towards the forehand.
Yes, what enrages Becker is that Sampras was walking to the other side. Love the way he accompanied the insult with the sort of knee kick. Here we go. Oh, as if he was
catching somebody in the groin.
Yes, quite. Oh dear. Two break-back points for Sampras.
Well, it's going to take a supreme effort, Ray, for Becker to get out of this. Remember, it was the double fault and the tiebreaker that caused such a difference.
Five break points Sampras has had in the match. Hasn't converted. Becker's had two and has on one. fives from the Becker bench, wife and coach. Especially because it's now set point. An hour and 19 minutes, and we'll go the distance here. And somehow that seems only fitting.
Yes, Germany's tennis has depended so long on the likes of Becker and to a lesser extent Steffi Graf, of course. So nice to see him still encouraging the flag to fly. Carsten Kiefer, of course, will be hoping to step into his shoes, although they're really too big for anybody to fill. But a lion-like effort by a man sadly short of match play, and yet showing still the great strength and will that we know he's always had.
The roof view, looking down on what is still a pretty full arena here, even at just gone 11 o'clock at night. The second set statistics. Oh boy, look at that for serving from both of them. One more winner from Becker. But crucially, he had one break point. He took it. Sampras had two. He didn't. Third set, Sampras to serve. Ace from Sampras, who only served one in that last set. So Sampras starts the third set with a love service game. He's not downhearted by the loss of the second. Stay with us. We'll be back. Welcome once again. We're into the third and final set. Sampras against Becker. Becker to serve. Love one. Still excellent serving statistics for Becker.
Yes, he's not usually as consistent a first serve-in server as Sampras is, because he tends to hit the ball that much flatter. Hasn't been doing that so much tonight, thus his percentage is up. But he would seldom get into the 60% range, usually in the 50s.
Oh dear. Really got underneath that one, sort of flapped at it a little bit. So 6 successive points for Sampras.
I just hope the love service game is not going to be followed by a love service break.
Lanacone. Well, it was desperately close. Becker down on his knees, begging for the overrule. He's not going to get it.
Well, he feels it was a rank injustice. It really was very, very close. We're in no position to gauge, but I think a lot of it stems from a bad call he got against Krajcik last week, which I think prevented him winning the first set and winning perhaps the match there. Certainly seems to have got a bit of the line.
Yeah, one of those desperately close ones, and on the far sideline, highly unlikely that any umpire is going to overrule that. Sampras 2-love up.
Andrew Clement, the young French hope. A little of the energy just went out of Becker there, and consequently you can hear he's putting more of it into his soliloquy now. Really feels hard done by.
And I suppose his soliloquy might be saying, is this a dagger I see before me? Because it's going straight through my heart at the moment. Sampras drives it in still deeper. 12 points played in the third set, and Sampras has won them all. 3-love. The ace is statistics, but the real statistics that matter at the moment are that it's 3-love for Sampras in the final set. And Becker needs to catch a ride from his mate Mika Häkkinen if he's going to catch Sampras now. New balls. Seventh double fault. He's won a point.
Yes, I wonder when Becker, if ever, has lost 13 successive points.
Oh my word, and Sampras is displaying a repertoire of shots that I've never seen, these drive volleys.
Could see it coming in the last point, really, where he played some really good backhands, some slices, and it's given him the feel suddenly. Of course, he has the confidence now of a break-up. He can let it rip. But the feeling on his backhand side comes and goes.
Becker opens his account in this final set. And that's a relief, because at 15:30 you were thinking, oh, please don't let this be an anti-climax of a set. One break, there's still hope. After all, he's broke Sampras in the second set.
Yes, and showing still a bit of spring in the mind, at least, Becker. Matter of conveying those same thoughts to his legs now. And they're just a little late on it. Trying to do it with the arm, needed to shuffle across another, what, third of a meter, another couple of feet perhaps.
Those aces down the centre have been quite superb for Sampras. That one 198 kilometres an hour.
He's always been very difficult to read, of course, Sampras. Learned to direct his serve at the very last minute. His original coach from LA, Pete Fisher, used to tell him now which way to hit it. Just at the height of his ball toss.
Sampras moves 3 games in front once again. 4-1 in front. You're watching Eurosports Live, an exclusive coverage of the Open de Paris in this tremendous match between Boris Becker and Pete Sampras. If you're awaiting World Cup football, the first leg of the qualifying tie between Russia and Italy, it will of course follow right after this match. Tomorrow, last 16 action from Bercy. We'll be with you from 2 o'clock in the afternoon UK time, 3 Central Europe. The Sampras winners count surging ahead. 1-4 Becker.
Well, it's a must-win game, this, for Becker. I think he salvaged a fair amount of pride in this match so far anyway, even if Sampras were to run out the winner, but that's never enough for Becker, salvaging pride. It's winning that counts, that's what matters.
Sampras furious with himself. An opportunity there.
He let up on it. It was there to be hit, and he didn't let rip.
Ooh, my word, that was close.
Magnificent shot. It's a pity you don't get any points for it. Of course, should Sampras win this match, he'll need that backhand of his against Peter Korda in the next round, the left-handed Czech player.
Oh. Well, Becker had to play one more shot than he was expecting, but he was equal to it.
Yes, it seemed an easy put away, this, for Becker. Again, not hitting the ball that hard, but Sampras, full of anticipation, had a jump start.
Crisp and decisive on the volley.
Well, first point or two, really pretty important, particularly the first, you feel. Becker gets a sniff of a chance. He may well take it. Now will Sampras concentrate on that middle line again? Well, he didn't hold back on that one, did he?
No, he really went for it. He knew there was the opening, and he didn't miss it by much. There's that distinctive sound when it goes into the top of the tape.
Well, the Becker of old, so often he does that to good effect. I feel Becker could play on nails and he'd be diving across them. Doesn't bother him. This is rubber surface laid on wood.
And that's another broken string. Pointing to his little grommet device, the dampener prevents the vibration going up the racket handle and into the arm.
Well, he's been looking at it for some time, and I was just thinking it's the sort of thing that could go on a ground stroke, of course, in which case it would certainly be fatal. But first serve is, I suppose, the best time for it to go.
30-15 second serve now. Yeah, right down the middle. Swung in at the last moment. And Sampras is within one game of victory, leading by 5 games to 2 in the final set, although it is just the one break of serve.
Yes, it's not cut and dried, that's for sure. It's just been that one little slip by Becker, and Sampras was able to rip it away from him. But the second point of that last service game of Sampras has showed that providing Becker can hang on, there is still a chance. He had a good shot with the forehand of getting to love 30 on the Sampras serves. Looks like the war zone there, doesn't it?
More work for the stringers.
There's a lot of these players that have their own stringers, otherwise they're official stringers. Stringers provided by the gut manufacturers.
This is a whole group of them in the lobby of our hotel this week, which is within a couple of minutes walk of the arena. Two-5. Becker must hold serve here, or it's all over.
Yes, there was a bit of a collapse on the first serve there from Becker, which didn't bode well.
Well, that racket didn't last very long.
There he goes again. The shoulders of a worried man. How many more rackets have I got?
Enough. How many has he got through so far? I suppose he could always borrow a couple from Boris.
It came so close.
30-50. A little bit of perspiration has got on the court. Sampras finding his own way of drying it.
Well, a couple of big serves in the nick of time there for Becker. Just felt he was entering the last stage of his last tournament here at Bercy. Had he not come up with them.
An hour and 46 minutes they've been on court, and Sampras is serving for the match.
Just riding the power well here, Sampras. No need to put much force into it. There's a lot of force in the Becker return.
Three match points.
And he's lost just the 3 points on his serve in this final set, Sampras.
It's the ace down the centre that ends it. A 15th of the match from Sampras. Becker made it a real match by coming back to win the second set. But in the end, he had to give best to the man who is the best in the world, Pete Sampras.
Yes, it was ultra competitive. You could see their instincts came out. They were really like prize fighters. They were on edge. And it led to a real expletive by Sampras, a couple of blowouts by Becker. But the double fault in the first set tiebreaker may have been the expensive thing which Becker really could not sustain.
Now we've overstayed our welcome, so we won't have time to hear from Pete Sampras. But what we will do is to bring you these matches tomorrow, starting at 2 o'clock UK. Greg Rosetsky's on before that, but we will obviously try and record the end of his match for you and slip it in at some stage during the course of the day. A huge